You're listening to the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast, where when you can't be in the outdoors, we bring it to you. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast. The first episode of 2021. We made it. 2020 is gone. It is beyond us. This year is going to be amazing, and I am glad to welcome you back. We've taken a couple weeks off here, not intentionally per se, but we've had a couple weeks off here, and we are back in action. Chase, dude, kind of fill everybody in. What has been going on in your world while we've been gone?
Well, not a whole lot, man, other than I have been working a lot. Been working a lot of overtime, hunted a little bit, haven't hunted a whole lot. Seems like a lot of the deer that I've kind of been hunting, it's been more of a lot of nocturnal movement this time of year. Okay. I would attribute that to maybe the acorn drop this season. Still a lot of acorns and stuff on the ground. The food sources aren't as limited maybe in years past. And so I just think that there's probably been enough pressure on them this season, and they're not really having to go far to find food. So I just feel like they're not moving as much as they normally would at the end of the season. At least that's what my cameras are telling me, and some of my hunting is telling me as well. Just not as much deer activity in the daytime as there normally probably would be this time of year. But been working a bunch. Just been taking this time to work some overtime. It's just a lot of factors at work where there's some overtime right now. So just taking advantage of that, and hopefully going to use that money to for some hunting stuff, things like that. So that's what's been going on with me. And you're the one that's kind of been MIA of action, so yeah. More about you right now than it is me.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, I came down with a pretty good case of COVID. You probably can still, I don't know how this is going to sound. I don't know if I sound stuffy or if my voice, I know, has been going out in this podcast. I've been coughing a lot, but I think I've managed to keep all that to a minimum. But I ran a fever for 12 days, lost 15 pounds. It was hands down the worst sickness that I have ever had in my entire life. And we planned on taking 1 week off. We fought the way that this podcast, plays out. We drop our podcasts on Tuesdays. December had 5 Tuesdays in it, and Chase and I, because of the holidays, because of hunting season, it was just difficult to get that 5th one out in December, and we just decided we were just going to, drop our 4 like we do every month and see you guys on the other side. And good Lord, I'm glad we decided to go that route, because from December 20th on, I was in port. Somewhere around December 20th. It's all kind of a blur, but I was down for the count, and I lived in a 10-by-10 room in the front of the house. My wife would put food outside my door like I was a jail inmate, and that was it, man. So it couldn't have come. I mean, here's the deal: it kind of couldn't come at a worse time, because my South Georgia rut is picking up. Thank God that it happened during our 2-week Christmas break, which, it's a 2-week paid holiday from work. So my wife was able to completely focus on, me and what was going on, and there wasn't stress about money and everything. So, and somehow my pregnant wife managed not to get it. And if you know anything about COVID or respiratory illnesses in pregnant women, once that baby gets to a certain size and she's at 20 weeks now, breathing becomes difficult as it is. And this disease or illness, however you want to call it, it attacks your lungs even more. So every day she tested negative twice, and every day I was like, okay, if I have to lay in here for 2 weeks and she doesn't get it, I'll do it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you found out some good news that you're having a boy, right?
Yeah, I'm excited. I really am, because I know I was a boy, so I feel like I've got a better idea of how to raise a young man. We'll see. I'm sure I'll make some mistakes, but I'm excited to have a hunting buddy. I mean, it's going to be a couple years, but I'm still excited.
Yeah, yeah, man, that's awesome. And then it was the best thing. Like I said, you got COVID, but Elena was unfazed by it, so that's great.
The good news is it will not impact turkey season or fishing or anything like that, and I still probably will get out and do a little bit of hunting in January here and there. But yeah, I mean that's the excitement that I have, as unexciting as that was.
Right.
But today's guest makes up for that lack of excitement. Tanner Edenfield, he came on last July of 2019 and talked spearing pigs and blow darting pigs. But his real big passion is chasing whitetails. And this past year, he hunted 5 different states and hunted all but about 10 to 12 days of the year. And I tell you what, every so often we come across a guest that just hits the ground running. We started talking on the phone call. He thought we were recording, and I had to like pump the brakes on the conversation and be like, "Hey, let's get recording before we lose all this good stuff."
Oh yeah, yeah. He definitely hit the ground running, and you're right. It was like, oh, we're not recording yet. Which some of it I wish we would have had recorded. It was actually a good dialogue,
Yeah.
but we transitioned well right into the podcast, and this is going to be one of our longer podcasts. It's probably going to be somewhere around an hour and 40 to 45 minutes of Tanner talking. So there's a lot of good information in there, especially somebody that hunts as much as he does and the places that he gets to hunt.
Yeah, for sure. What I like about Tanner is he's like he's that like practical. You struggle to stump him with a good question, right? Because you're like, if you were to say, "How do you kill big deer?" He's gonna tell you to get in the woods and be out there with him. Like he's just that guy that's so straightforward with his answers, and he's practical about how he gets after deer. I enjoy talking to him, and I'm lucky enough that I talk to him on a probably a weekly, couple times a week basis. He's a good dude, and his passion is pretty intense for whitetail, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. You can tell he's got a big passion for whitetails, and like you mentioned, he doesn't really sugarcoat anything. Like if you ask him a question, he's going to give you exactly how he feels about whatever that question is. And he's kind of one of those guys. He's got a system that works for him, and he's not really going to deviate off of that system.
And I think that's what plays out for him. We had a lot of questions. This is, man, I'll be honest with you. We probably asked this guest more like listener questions than any other. I had the whole Facebook feed popped up, and our Patreon feed had given us a lot of good questions to ask people, or ask Tanner. And I felt like we just hit him with question after question. It always just felt like he had an answer ready, and it was always very practical. I think I think it kind of goes back to the killers have a process, and oftentimes that process isn't very complicated. I'm not downplaying them, but they find what works for them, and then they just do it over and over again.
Right, yeah. He's got a system that he's found that really works for him, and that's what he's sticking to. And we've talked about that before with people. Like you got your infalt likes to hunt buck beds, and was it Eberhart? He likes to hunt kind of like destination areas, things like that. And that's what they know, and that's what they've really been successful at. And a lot of times when you are that successful, it's kind of hard to deviate off of that.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll get you guys to that episode. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think it's one that I think the perspective. I think a lot of people have like this fantasy of what it's like to be on the road that often, and he sleeps in his car. We didn't touch on that, and maybe we can talk on that next time we have him on. But I do know he sleeps the majority of the time in the back seat of his car, so it's not a very luxurious lifestyle, but he does what he has to in order to get it done. So. Before we get to that, before we send you guys to that, I just want to touch on our Patreon giveaway that we are supposed to announce right now. We're not going to do that. We will announce it the next episode, largely because I'm not organized and I haven't had a chance to pick a winner. I didn't think about that until about 30 minutes before we scheduled or before we hit go on the podcast. But we will be announcing very, very soon the Patreon giveaway winner, which is for the last quarter, which is the Alps Outdoor Pack, two Titan straps from or two 20-inch Titan straps that was featured on our YouTube channel, and Scree Gear has kicked in a couple of their Kaibab 170 merino layers as well. So we will pick a winner next episode, and we will also announce the details of our upcoming giveaway, and I think it's going to be a big hit. So you're going to want to be there for that. And if you are hearing this and you're thinking, I want to get in on some giveaways, if you scroll down to the show notes, there's a link below where you can go and join and support the podcast. The money from that comes from Patreon goes towards hosting fees and camera gear and GoPros and travel costs, all the things that make this podcast possible, allow this podcast to grow, come from Patreon. So we'd love it if you'd consider supporting the show over there on Patreon.
Yeah, like you mentioned, we've got a pretty big Patreon giveaway to start 2021 right. And I think if this is something you're interested in, this is going to be a great giveaway to go ahead and get your feet wet and get in on. And the group that we have, our Marco Polo group, is a great group. There's a lot of good information that is in that group, and you just get to have good dialogue with other people that kind of hunt around mainly the southern U.S., but there are some other areas where people are from. So I think that you kind of, if you help support the show in that way, then you're going to get a lot more out of it.
I agree. With that, everybody, here's Tanner Edenfield. I hope you enjoy listening as much as we did recording it. So let's get them to the show.
Let's do it.
Dude, what is going on, Tanner? I am thrilled that after months of begging you to come on the podcast, that you've decided to grace our podcast with your presence.
Man, what you talking about? I've been begging you to be on here.
But Tanner sent me a message, I don't know, maybe mid-December, and he was like, so you just don't want me on the podcast, huh? And it was at that moment I recognized that I had invited him on numerous times and just failed to find a good time to to fit him in. So we're remedying that right now, because the last time we had you on was July of 2019, and that's I think that's a felony in 13 states.
Yeah, and I didn't even get to talk about deer.
No,
Like
it was blowguns and spears.
Yeah, I deer hunt like my entire life. I spear hunt for like 2 months, and then I get on there and talk about that, and don't even get to talk about deer.
Yeah, no, I mean back then, dude, you had like 15 subs, right?
I don't know, man.
July 2019.
1,500 maybe. I don't know.
Maybe 1,500. That's right.
Well, we're kind of notorious for bringing people on to talk about something completely different than what they're
It's
known
true.
for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of our 2020 resolutions, is to bring guests on and talk about the subject matter they probably want to.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man, dude.
I was happy to like talk about it, but what was kind of funny was at the end, you were like, how many hogs do you think you killed with a spear? And I'm like, so clearly you're thinking like I'm an expert. And I'm like, one.
Yeah. No, that was, and
So here was the deal. I said if I got to where I'd blow darted 10 hogs and never found one, I'd quit. Well, long story short, I quit.
don't even have to go back to listen to that episode. He doesn't do it anymore.
It's like, you're hiding in a bush trying to get within 3 yards of a hog. Like, this is a time-consuming endeavor, and it's like the way I deer hunt, and then add that on top of it too. Like that's like a collision course to being single. Like, you got to give a little, But so anyway, I quit messing with the blow darts.
Well, I mean, let's not dwell on that, since we're guilty of talking about the wrong subject matter. But I think people who listened to that first episode knew you as Tanner Edenfield bow hunting, and that was a name that you just kind of picked out for a placeholder. Why don't you kind of tell everybody about your new YouTube handle? You did a contest.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I spent like probably over a year trying to come up with a name that I liked, and because once I changed it, I didn't want to change it again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So actually, one of the names I already had in mind was Have Bow Will Travel, but then probably 10 different people suggested it too. So uh, anyway, that ended up being the name, Have Bow Will Travel. And then of course I got it trademarked, and once that went through, it changed it on YouTube.
Yeah, man. So are you
Yeah, I
paying them
just
royalties? Those 10 people?
nah. I had it whenever I made the little contest post. I had a stipulation in there. You had to pick something we hadn't thought of already.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I just wanted something a little bit more marketable, and then like suppose I had a buddy that wanted to hunt or something. Ideally, I'd like to get some guys around here filming and kind of contributing a little bit, and Tanner Edenfield bow hunting is just I don't know, same kind of vein, and then it's not like scalable. Not that I'm really going to scale it to any astronomical proportions, but
Yeah. Uh-huh. I I have a feeling when it's all said and done, Have Bow Will Travel will be a household. It'll basically replace Bone Collector when it's all said and done.
yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe. Yeah,
So
man.
what?
Waddell,
Why? Go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, man, Waddell was just blowing up my phone, begging me to join. I'm like, bro, chill.
Well, you don't shoot Hoyts anyways, so you know.
Yeah, I mean, dude, our thing is shooting medium-sized bucks. Can't let him get on here and make us look bad.
My role in the relationship here is I pretend to be a deer hunter and Chase does all the killing for me. So
And doesn't film any of
it wasn't an ideal situation for the camera at all this year. In fact, I got to think about this before I say it, but I don't think we got a single kill on camera this year. Yeah.
I'm running behind myself.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to get you a cameraman, man, because all the shenanigans you go through. I mean, you lost yourself a $1,200 camera this year in a swamp because you were trying to be the cameraman.
That's true. I just don't know, man. Like, my thing is like, I'm not trading half my hunting to like take turns filming somebody, and
Mm-hmm.
it ain't exactly in my budget to hire somebody to follow me around for 5 months out of the year.
Yeah. Well,
So,
it's not exactly cheap.
yeah, and I'm so like fly by the seat of my pants. It's hard to coordinate with anybody, really.
Yeah, that's the thing I think about what you do, and we'll kind of get into this as we go. Um, but I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, I don't know, people. I posted to Facebook, what do you have? What questions do you have for someone who hunts 5 states and dang near all but 10 days of the deer season? And a lot of people are they we got a bunch of questions to pull through. I'm sure we'll naturally hit them, but a lot of them was like, how do you plan for all that? And I'm sitting over here like, I get a call from Tanner. He's like, yeah, I'm headed to Kansas for 13 days or pretty much until it happens. And that's kind of how you do things, man. I think you probably have like a timeline in mind, but I mean, you just kind of go.
I just leave my house the first cold front after like October 24th and head to the Midwest. And that's pretty much what I do. Just watch the weather. Hey, it's getting cold. Time to get out of here.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me how duck hunters act, actually. Okay, so the cold fronts push birds down all the time, and as a reformed duck hunter who used to be addicted to this kind of thing, you would try and time your hunts before the cold front got there because the birds would be ahead of that cold front. And so a lot of duck hunters basically sit on go, geese hunters as well, and they'll pull up radar maps, and when they see a band of rain coming across 3 different states, they'll just stop everything, put their whole life on hold, load up the trailer, and get out ahead of that, like a day or two's worth of flying ahead of that storm, so that they can catch that new wave of birds. So it's kind of a lot like that, where those guys, they live a schedule that's based dominantly on the weather.
Like this year in Ohio, I was there for 10 days. Probably the first 7 days, it was like 80 degrees, which my plan just didn't work out this year because it never got cold. So I was like, well, might as well just go, like.
Right.
So first 7 days, it was like 80 degrees. I didn't see a deer I'd shoot in 7 days, and then, or maybe 8 days. And then I saw 2 shooters the day before I killed, and then on day 10, I killed mine by like 8:30. Something like that. I mean, and the only difference was it just got cold.
Do you think that's why you killed him, or do you think it was just enough time put in that area you caught him moving, or do you attribute it directly to the cold weather?
No, I mean directly to the cold. I mean, like I said, I was hunting. I hunted for 7 days and didn't see. A lot of days I didn't even see a deer, dude. And then
Really?
the day. Okay, yeah, it was 7 days of being hot, and then day 8, I saw one for sure shooter and one maybe shooter. Day 9, I saw 2 shooters, and then day 10, I saw a shooter, and then I had shooters on a couple other cameras too when I went back and checked them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like 7 days of 5 or 6 cameras, not one camera having a shooter on it in 7 days, and then all of a sudden it gets cold and they just come out of the woodwork.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what did your cameras do? What did your cameras show during that time period? Were they just nocturnal to find the cool air, or do you think they just literally just don't move much at all because of the heat?
I mean, there were some showing up at night. I just think the heat shuts them down. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I would assume they're obviously still looking for does and still moving some, but I don't think they're out walking several miles or anything like that.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
What degree of cool does it take / cold do you think to start getting, like, at what point do you start seeing deer movement again? Is it 60 degrees, or is it like
I
freezing?
think it depends where you're at.
Okay.
So 80 degrees in Georgia, I don't think would really shut it down like it would in Ohio, or like it did in Ohio. And I don't really have a whole lot of frame of reference. This year was the first time I've ever been there when it was really, really hot. Because normally I
Mm-hmm.
just wait until it gets cold, but it was hot. I'm like,
When you wait for it to get cold, what are you normally waiting on?
I don't know, 30s, 20s,
Gotcha.
20s ideally.
Gotcha.
But I mean, like, you got lows in the 40s, they're still going to be moving, but they're not going to be moving like they are if it's lows in the teens.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the colder the better.
I could see that. Yeah, I mean, I think that probably bears out honestly to a large extent here. I mean, I don't think that the deer stop moving because it gets cold. I think it
Oh,
actually kind of plays into into our favor, doesn't it?
oh, for sure. I mean, it's definitely the colder the better here too. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying, here our deer are not going to have nowhere near the coat that an Ohio deer has.
Right.
So say it's 80 degrees, that's going to shut our deer down, but it's not going to shut them down like it does up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That would be like it being 100 degrees here in November.
Oh, for sure. I think if it gets like brutally cold here, I think it actually almost kind of has the opposite effect to an extent, because I feel like they're not equipped to handle. I'll put it plainly. I have a cell camera up in Georgia, and the moment I had 2 days where it got down to 20 degrees, 21 degrees, and the action by the camera that day was nonstop. And if you looked at each one of them, they were puffed up like it was freaking snowing outside. And I was looking at it then. I was kind of like, huh, okay, well, I bet you those deer are up and moving because they don't have the ability to just sit down.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
probably cold.
a warm-blooded animal, you burn more calories and heat than you do anything. So
Right.
the colder it gets, the more calories you're burning just
Mm-hmm.
to maintain your body temperature. And they got to get up and eat. I mean, there just ain't no way around it.
Right. Yeah. I think it speaks a lot to you and your drive as a deer hunter, that it's that hot and you still put in what, 9 days you said?
And
10?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't going to stop you from going. I think honestly, your determination to go and make things happen. One of the biggest questions we got was, like, how does he do it? How does he kill so many deer? And I don't know that I hyped you up as a big buck killer, but I mean, you do kill a lot of deer, and I think part of that is you just go. And you and I've kind of talked about that before. That there's a lot of people who they get tired, maybe they don't go, they don't fit your hunting lifestyle. What's it been like trying to find a hunting partner?
I really haven't ever looked. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that there's ever been a time that I've hunted with somebody that I didn't feel like they were quitting.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to anybody that's listening that maybe I've hunted with, but I mean, like, I'm hesitant to give too many details. So the last time I went on an out-of-state deer trip with somebody, we went in by boat, and I'm looking at, like, my thing is if we walk far, we could get away from people. If we went in by boat, we could get away from people. But if we went in by boat and walked really far, we could definitely get away from people. You know what I mean? So I have 4 or 5 spots picked out that look good on the map that are, maybe half a mile to a mile off the bank. So after we get done, we go look at the first one, and then he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be walking that far again.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
So, and I haven't, like I said, I really haven't looked for a hunting partner. I mean, there's not that many people that are gonna have the flexibility in their schedule just to drop what they're doing and go chase a cold front out in the Midwest. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't want to be like me and you go to Kansas and I shoot something day one. I'm not gonna sit there and twiddle my thumbs for a week.
Yeah.
While you try to kill one, I'm gonna be wanting to go somewhere.
Yeah. I think the only person I know that has as flexible a schedule as you probably is Chase himself, just because his work schedule is as forgiving as it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it is.
he takes off like 2 days and he's off for almost a month of what was it? What was it? You took off 2 days and you were off from mid-October to middle of November?
I didn't take off 2 days, but
It was one. Was it one day?
no. I have the ability to take off that amount of time with no problem.
Yeah.
But I
What do
still,
you do, Chase?
I'm a firefighter. I work for the fire department, so I can get vacation. I can trade time with people, and I just lined it all up. And I took from, I think it was October 18th through November 21st off, where I didn't have to go into work at all this past year. Yeah, I just planned everything up to that because I knew down here that's the start of it was going to be the best hunting, and then I took off to go on the rut hunt in the Midwest. And when I got back, I knew it would be still somewhat decent down here, so I just took that chunk of time off because I figured those were generally my best odds. Or is that probably time frame to kill a mature buck?
Right.
So yeah, I got the time, but see, I've got kids and stuff like that, so it's not like I can just take off any time I want to on a whim. And I was around the house for a lot of that, but probably 10 days of that I was out chasing bucks in the Midwest. But yeah, I do have the time.
Well,
I do have the time.
Chase, let's kind of compare real quick. I forgot. It's been a long year. I forgot that you went to Iowa during that same warm front that Tanner was dealing with. How does what he say kind of jive with what you saw on public land there in Iowa? Which, acknowledging the hunting pressure is totally different in Iowa.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of the same. I probably there wasn't any days that I went where I didn't see deer. It was just that I wasn't seeing the mature bucks out and about, and there was a lot of probably bucks that I jumped that were already bedded down with does during that time. And I can say it was hot the whole time I was there, and I mean unseasonably warm where it's in Iowa. I mean there were days that it got up to 77, 78 degrees in the evening times. And they were just same thing. Was shut down. There were cameras. You'd see a little bit of movement at night, and then we had to leave because we were actually trying to get back because of that. I call it the great drizzle of 2020 down here in Florida. That was this supposed to be this hurricane or whatever in November. We were trying to get back before that hit, and there was a guy up there that was hunting, and the weather turned like a day after we left to where the high one of the days was going to be like 35 after we left. And he told me that he saw 9 different bucks that morning, and 4 of them were shooters. Like instantly, the day that it cooled down to where it was high of 34 or 35, he was seeing that many bucks. And before that, a good day might be where you would see the most I saw in a day was 4 different bucks in a whole day of hunting. Or actually, right at the end, I saw more, but that's just because I was moving around. I probably saw like 5 the morning I left. But other than that, it was the same thing, just super slow. And there was 2 other guys hunting. It was the same story pretty much everywhere that week, or it was hot. So I agree. I told Walter, and I told my buddy, I'm like, hey, because he had to go up there during that time because I went up there with a buddy, and he had to be up there during that time frame because he had to be back at a certain time. And I was like, nah, I don't think we need to go up that time. I know you have to. We have to be up there. I was like, I don't think it's going to be a good idea, and it wasn't. And I was like, I'll never do that again where I have set days that I have to go because it was literally a 7-day warm front. And I was like, if we just would have not gone at that time and went the next week, it was like I said, that guy kept hunting, and it was like gangbusters for like 5 straight days of seeing bucks cruising everywhere. During that time frame when it was cold, and I was like, I won't ever do that again. I was like, if I got out there and then I found out it was going to be that hot for 7, I was like, I would drive back home and then come back up again 7 days later.
Yeah,
it was that big of a difference to me.
I can't remember who it was I was talking to the other day, but that is not like you're not alone in that sentiment of not going then. I think it was Clayton Bond. He was talking about hunting Kentucky. He went and hunted Kentucky bunch this year, and he's like, dude, if I go back, it'll never be X week, it'll be like the last week of October. He was like, he said more deer were being killed, and he had his reasons, but he kind of echoed a lot of what you just said. I think
sure,
that's kind of
appreciate you shouting out where he went.
Oh man, I did. I'm gonna have to bleep that out. God, man. I'm sure he does appreciate that. Golly. Yeah. He's like, yeah, well, I'm going to avoid the entire month of October now, thanks. Wow, I just put that out there, and that's something I really hate in people.
Oh, well. Yeah. We can cut it out.
Good news is this isn't live. But I wonder though, like, I don't know, maybe you guys don't have an opinion on this, but you know how everybody has the hot new way to kill deer, and everybody flocks to do it, and all the social media guys and the YouTube guys start emanating it, and then it becomes the next big craze, kind of like using a climber and stuff like that. I wonder if
that was the big craze back in 1990.
Yeah, appreciate you, Tanner. I teed that one up for you because you're an avid climber user. But I wonder if I wonder how long before that first week of October isn't as effective anymore because THP's been pushing it, and Parker's been pushing it, and Chase, you're picking up on it. Like, I wonder how long before that no longer is as effective.
Depends where you're at, I guess. You're saying the first week of October?
No, the last week of October.
Oh, last week of October? I mean, It ain't. I don't think that's anything new, bro.
You don't think so? Even though it seems like most people plan their vacation for the first week of November.
Well, I mean, it's kind of understood that there's going to be the most people there the peak of the rut. But I guess I didn't understand what you're saying. You're speaking directly as to the pressure on a public piece of land.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, never mind.
I wonder as because public land hunting is becoming more and more popular, right? We're hearing people complain about it all the time. There's people building entire platforms that's like anti-public land hunting and celebrating private land hunting. And so as that grows and that pressure hits that first week of November, and then people go and they experience that and they come away with it, with the chases start going, okay, well, that first week of October, or I'm sorry, I did say that earlier, the last week of October, like I wonder if that doesn't become the more, like, is there not a shift that'll occur, and then does the second weekend of November become the good time to go? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud like an idiot.
Yeah, I don't know. I think anytime between like October 25th and like the middle of November, probably going to be. I mean, you got pretty. Like I would pick the like if it was going to be cold, the last week of October, I'd pick that every time over the peak of the rut, and it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. But now, as far as the pressure on public land, I mean, the deer's still going to move during the rut. It's just a matter of, how many people you're having to compete against.
Yeah. Well, it's like water access. Water access got its popularity, and now it's harder to get away from people because $100 kayaks can be had anywhere, and now people go deeper, longer, so they stay further.
I might catch some flack for saying this. I think right now is probably the worst time to get into public hunting.
Why is that?
Because everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, and don't get me wrong, you can still find spots that don't get touched, but there's definitely a increase in the popularity of it.
Yeah.
What I like to do is, if I'm going to hunt public, 9 times out of 10, I'm getting on Onyx and finding a private landowner that's nowhere near a gate and going and knocking on their door and asking them if I can at least cut through their land to get to the public.
Mm.
And, or can I hunt your land? But if I can't, can I at least cut through it?
Yeah. Well, let's kind of spend some time on that, though, because that's something that has always impressed me about you is not only your success rate, but your persistence in asking for permission. And I know that's something that scares a lot of people. And maybe scared is the wrong word, and I'm sure there's somebody who's like, oh, don't call me a pansy. I'm not trying to say it like that, like you're scared of the dark. But I think probably more people than they would like to admit don't ask for permission because they're worried about hearing no. Or like, what do I say? How did you kind of go about asking for permission? Did you just get tired of hunting public, and then that fed into you just walking up and asking somebody, and then learning from it?
Not really. I mean, I never even hunted public until a couple of years ago. I just, like, growing up, I would talk to every single one of my friends' parents and find out how much land they had, if anybody hunted it, and got a few spots that way. And then I just started realizing, like, if you just seem nice, people will let you hunt, So, and then of course, as my painting business grew, I'm just constantly running into people. So, a lot of it's came through that, and then I started, I guess through that, I just realized it's really not that hard. I mean, people, especially if you tell them you're a bow hunter, people will give you permission. I mean,
yeah.
If you just seem like a nice guy.
So I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it because I think it's funny as can be. What's the Tanner Edenfield painting discount if somebody lets you hunt their property?
I guess it depends how much land it is.
You told me one time you got permission to hunt like 50 acres because you gave a lady like $100 off the job or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I can't remember the specific time that you asked, but yeah, I mean, normally it'd be something like that, and they're thinking like, great, and I'm thinking like, yeah, if I would have leased this, it would have been like $500.
Yeah.
And, like I'll go when I knock on doors, I don't just be like, hey, can I hunt here? I always generally offer to trade them some painting work, and to this day, I have never had to paint anything. But I think just the fact that you're not just asking for a straight up handout helps,
Right. Is that your go-to, trying to, be friendly, but then on top of that, make yourself look like you're not just like, is that the winning combination? Friendly bow hunting, not just asking for a handout?
Yeah, I think that definitely contributes. Because, they're thinking eventually I'm going to need something painted. But then it's like the other day, I'm out there putting a camera up at a house that I had just knocked on their door and got permission on, and they're like, "Yeah, I need to get you a quote. I need to get a quote from you on painting something." So like, they've already forgot I even offered to trade them any painting. Which I mean, obviously, I'm going to give them a hookup, but that property is crazy, man. It's like 8 acres, and the guy next door leases like 400 acres, and I have every one of his shooters in daylight on that 8 acres.
Oh,
Like I'll send him pictures as I get them. You know, like I mean, he's a buddy of mine. Like, have you seen this buck? He's like, yeah. And then I'd send him another one. Have you seen this buck? He's like, yeah. And then finally, I sent him a couple more, and he's like, yeah, you officially have every single one of my shooters on camera in daylight. Like, this goes to show
awesome.
all about being in the right spot, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, it sounds like if you ever want to buy a property and you want to know if it's worth hunting, just give Tanner Edenfield permission and he'll be able to confirm for you one way or the other.
Right. I mean, like that property there in particular, I knew it was a good spot. Like I've been trying to get that one for like 4 years, and it was like the first owner was selling it, and it sat there empty forever. I talked to the realtor there, letting the realtor hunt it. And finally, somebody bought it and went and talked to them, and they were cool. So,
How many people do you think you ask a year?
it's not been as many here lately because now I've got like I guarantee you, there's like big shooters that I don't know about because I haven't had time to put a camera on like all the properties that I have permission on. You know, so I would say now, like this year, I haven't gone out of my way and knocked on any doors because, well, number one, because of COVID. I take that back. I knocked on one, but mainly because of COVID. But say next year, I don't have any shooters, or I don't feel like I've got big enough deer on camera. I'm gonna knock on 5 or 10 doors every day probably until I find something that, get 3 or 4 more properties to check out.
And that's regardless of what state you're in.
No, I mean, that's here. Like, because here I can just go, like, say there's a property I want. I can just drive past their house every day until I see them at home, Like, out of state, I normally prefer to write letters because it's hard to catch them dang farmers at home, bro. Like last year in Kansas, I knocked on this guy's door like 5 times and never caught him at home. And then finally, the last day, I caught him at home and ended up getting permission, but I was already tagged out. Then I didn't get to hunt it this year because I couldn't draw a tag.
I feel like somebody listening to this is sitting there like, God, that truck has driven up and down the road a bunch. I wonder if that's Tanner looking for that dude.
Good possibility.
I want to ask
Chase.
him, what's your success rate when you ask for permission?
Door knocking?
Yeah, just door knocking or generally asking.
Door knocking, if they don't already hunt it, I'd say I probably get 50%. But overall, I'd say 25, 30%. I mean, a lot of them hunt or have a family member that hunts or whatever. And then letters, if you get 2%, you did really good.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to think it would be a higher percentage. Like I think you and I talked about that before, Tanner. And my success rate via knocking on doors is 0, whereas writing letters I get about 10%. I get a response about 10% of the time. I've actually gotten permission to hunt places that once I got there, it was like, this is not what it looked like on X.
Yeah.
But I also don't write near I think if I were to write more letters, I think my percentage would dip. I don't think it would improve or stay the same.
Yeah, it's hard to say. The other thing about you're talking about the winning combination. If you already have permission like next to them, it seems like it's a lot easier. Like, there's been a lot of, okay, like for example now, like where I killed the baby 13 last year, I had permission on one track, but I ended up adding 50 more acres to it by asking 3 different people if I could walk through their property to get to that track. And then, that's not a big ask. I'm not even asking to hunt there. All I want to do is walk through. And then you become friends with them, and then you can hunt it too.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I saw Taylor Chamberlain in one of his videos. It was the slickest move I've ever seen in my life. He shot a deer, and the deer went across because he hunts these like 2,500 square foot lots, and I mean seriously, some of the places he hunts, it's ridiculous. But I love Taylor. I'm just picking at him, but the deer runs across this dude's property, and he walks up there, and he's getting permission just to get the deer. And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, do what you need to," and he's like super chill about it. You can tell this guy's like never hunted before. He's super apprehensive at first. He wins him over, and the guy's like, "Yeah, do what you want to." He's like, "Oh, okay, I can go get the deer, or can I also hunt here?" And the guy was like, it was like he opened the door and got permission to blood track, won him over on that, and then stepped in. He's like, "Yeah, so I totally got another property." I'm like, "Yep, that was slick. Like that was clever." So I could see how like getting permission to walk would also lead to that as well, like just walking
Yeah.
across the property.
So there's a saying in marketing or networking that people want to do business with someone that they know, like, and trust.
Sure.
And it's kind of the same principle in getting permission. Like if you can in a 30-second door conversation convince somebody to feel like they somewhat know you, like you, and trust you, that's usually all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you got the benefit of the internet too. Like, they're going to look you up. So, especially if you write a letter. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you're going to be writing letters, then you need to doctor up your Facebook and any social media that they can look up and check on you.
For sure. It kind of gives you the upper hand on them too, because one of the places that I asked for permission, I noticed it was like a family of brothers owned 4 different lots that all came together. They were 50-acre lots, and I got permission from one of them, and he was like, "Well, let's go talk to Steve." I don't even think that was his name, but let's go talk to Steve. And I almost got permission to hunt the other 3, and I knew who they were before I went there. And one of the reasons why I did that was because, like, man, if I can get permission for one of them, he'll probably introduce me to everybody else as well. Like I've got the in right then and there.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you actually plan your trips though? Because you hunt a bunch of different states. How, like, if a lot of it is by whim or by weather, are you just Kansas is best in this time of year, so I go there, or like how do you decide which one you're going to go to first?
So basically, and it kind of changes every year. So basically, what I do is, if a state sucks, I never go there again. I try to find something else. And I ain't
What
saying,
states suck?
Well, I'm not saying like if a spot in Kentucky sucked, I'm never going to Kentucky again. I'm just saying like,
Okay.
like if I had a lease in Kentucky and it sucked, then I would never go there. Then I wouldn't do it again. So then I would just, and I'm sure a lot of it's kind of random. I mean, I might just, I want to write some letters to Indiana, or whatever, and just, so basically whatever I can find that year. You know what I mean?
I got
and
you.
then if it's good, I'll keep it. Like, I'll never let Kansas go. I'll never let Ohio go. Just because I've got my feet in there enough, and I'll have decent. I know that I'll be able to maybe not kill good deer every year, but be on them every year. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then just kind of go from there. I mean, like this year, I didn't hunt as many states, but I couldn't draw Kansas, so I said I was just going to spend a lot of time in Ohio and try to kill a really big one. And I think mostly the heat just kind of shut that down. Anyway.
What does the scouting look like in this regard? So you write all these letters in the off season. Do you ever drive out there in the middle of the summer and put up cell cams, or do you drive to public and walk it during the spring, or is that all kind of reserved for deer season itself?
Pretty much deer season itself. So
okay.
The first year I went out of state, I had made 9 trips to Kentucky basically by the time deer season started.
Holy cow.
And I had I had like a really big 9-pointer, probably 135 inches, full velvet, showing up every single morning and evening. I'd made all these trips up there. I had him pretty much figured out. He was coming out of this cutover, and there was a thin strip of woods leading to the soybean field across the road. And every morning he'd be heading back into that cover, and every evening he'd be heading out of it. I'm like, yep, this is a done deal right here. And like I said, it took me probably 7 or 8 trips to find him, and then another trip or two to go up there and feed him and change batteries in the camera. And maybe like 4 or 5 days before deer season, he quit showing up. So I just happened to be talking to the neighbor. He's like, man, you seen any good deer? I was like, man, I had a really good one coming in every morning and evening, and he just disappeared. He's like, big 9-pointer? I'm like, yeah. He's like, let me send you a picture. You're going to want to see this. This deer gets hit by a car like 2 days before the season opens on a gravel road that you could honestly sit there for an hour and never see a car. I was like, yep, screw that. I'm not like, it's too much effort to drive 6. I mean, so like you kill a deer early season by doing your research and doing everything right. You kill one during the rut by being lucky. And I was like, yeah, it's too much effort to drive 6 to 8, 10 hours enough times to have a good chance at getting on an early season deer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, I mean, your scouting don't really, if I went all throughout the summer, you're not really looking at fresh sign, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just go up when it's right.
It's funny because I asked you one time, I was like, it was this past season. It was this season. Yeah. It was this season. And I said, hey, man, it's November. You must be getting really excited. And you were like, not really. It's the rut. And you were like, yeah, I know, but I really don't care hunting the rut because you like to hunt patterns and patternable deer.
Well, I hate hunting the rut here in Georgia. I love hunting the rut in the Midwest.
I got you. That was a Georgia-specific statement.
Yeah, so I'll have like 15 or 20 mature bucks that I have a pretty good tabs on every year here, and it's like the rut gets here, and I have no idea where to be. They're all gone. They're not doing what they're supposed to be or what they've been doing for 75% of the deer season. I know exactly what they're doing. And then the rut gets here, and they run around acting like idiots and chase girls, and it frustrates me hunting them here because it's hard to just like I have all this information like catalog of what this deer does. It's hard to throw all that away and just go sit in a random tree, which is what you really need to be doing, like during the rut. But that's hard to do, and that's part of the reason I leave during the rut.
Well, what state's the best state to hunt during the rut?
I mean,
you had to hunt one the rest of your life based on your experiences. What would you do?
Based on my experiences, Kansas. I would have to assume Iowa's better. And that's what everybody says anyway.
I don't know. Chase didn't kill anything when he went out there.
Yeah, but it was hot.
It was. It was. This season was not what we expected in so many different ways, but that is also the hunting season.
Kansas to me is the closest thing to heaven on earth.
Why?
Just amazing. I don't know. I mean, it's just, and you might have the same chances of killing a big buck in Ohio or somewhere, but you're gonna see a freaking big one every day in Kansas. You know what I mean? He might be 900 yards away, but the whole time you're seeing them. It's exciting. You talk about getting footage too. I mean, you can get more footage in a dang day in Kansas than you can in a week in Georgia. Easy.
Yeah. Because of the lack of cover, they're just always in the open?
Yeah, I mean, you just see so many deer because you can...
Yeah.
The woods is 10 yards on each side of the creek, and that's it. Like, the deer, if a buck wants to check more than one group of does, he's got to run across the field.
Mm-hmm.
So you just see so many more deer,
Sure.
and I don't know. I mean, they're not. They're kind of stupid too.
So what you're saying is everything Eberhart has said about Kansas is true.
Do what now?
Everything Eberhart has said about Kansas is true. Are you aware of his comments about Kansas?
No, sir, I'm not.
He I don't know. I don't. I'm just gonna paraphrase, but basically he thinks shooting deer in Kansas is like shooting fish in a bucket.
It kind of. I mean, it kind of is. Like,
Yeah.
so here's the thing. Say me and you went to like the spots I have to hunt in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Say I put you in what we decided was the worst tree on the property, and I sat in what we decided was the best tree on the property. My chances of killing would not be that much higher than yours. Like,
Mm.
like the trees, the deer run along the creeks. That's what they do. That's the only trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a tree, a deer is going to bed under you at some point within a week. Now, I'm sure it's not that way everywhere in Kansas, but where I'm at, the cover is just so limited that if you're in the woods, you got a pretty good chance of killing a good deer.
Yeah. I could see that. So given that you get to hunt all these states and you have all this time, what are your expectations for whitetail? Do they shift with each season, or do you go out of state and say this is the only thing, this or bigger, and I'm not pulling the trigger?
So here in Georgia, I try to kill 5-year-olds and older because I got plenty of time to hunt Georgia, and I ain't saying I won't shoot a giant, and I'll shoot whatever tickles my fancy. I mean, if I got a 3-acre property and a really nice 3-year-old's there, I ain't saying I won't shoot them, but generally I try to shoot. Well, I mean, I normally hunt the 4 or 5 biggest deer I get on camera, and generally those are 5 and older. And then of course, like this time of year, if I had a mature dink, I'd shoot them, But when it comes out of state, a lot of times it's like depends how much time I have and how many states I'm trying to hunt, and what I have on camera. I mean, generally, I feel like a true shooter in the Midwest would be like 140 or bigger, but I have had a really hard time finding places that I can even get pictures of a deer that big. Like I don't know, maybe my expectations are too high, but like if I go to Kentucky, if say I lease some land in Kentucky or got permission somewhere, I'm gonna go up there with the hopes of killing I guess like a 140. But if I run cameras, if I run 5 cameras for a week and don't have a picture of one, I'm liable to shoot a 120-inch 3-year-old and go to another state.
How do you think that matches up with people's um, like people who don't get as much time and maybe don't have the, I don't want to say resources, because what you've done, you every all the the resources you have are obtainable by everybody else, right? Like the permissions and everything. But for someone who maybe doesn't have that like apparatus set up right now, do you think people by and large set themselves up for failure with what they go out there to shoot, or do you think, I don't know really what I'm asking here per se, but it seems like a lot of people go out there trying to kill a Boone and Crockett buck or a Pope and Young buck, and I hear a lot of times people being like, looking back, I wish I had shot something else.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to shoot what you're happy with. It's hard to, I mean, depends how you define failure. I mean, some guys, if they, if you, it's just a personal thing. I mean, some guys wouldn't be happy to shoot just a 120-inch deer. So why shoot one? Might as well wait for something that's going to make you happy.
Sure.
That's why, to me, I mean, if Georgia had unlimited tags, I would shoot every 100-inch deer I saw. I mean, I'll shoot a 100-inch deer and come so unglued I can't even climb down out of the stand. So, I mean, I just try to be realistic for how many tags I have, how long I have, and what's in the area. You know what I mean? If I've got several, say it hadn't happened yet, but say I was out of state and ran cameras and had several 140-inch deer on camera, I'm not going to shoot a 120, but generally it's like, this is what's in the area, like
Sure.
just try to shoot, if I run 4 or 5 cameras in Ohio, I'm going to hunt the 2 or 3 biggest deer, I guess,
Right. Has that ever backfired on you, shooting something that you were happy with only to regret it later?
Yeah, so last year in Kentucky, there was I had 4 or 5 decent bucks on camera. There was one buck that was probably, I'm going to guess, like a 135-inch 10-pointer. He had never showed up in daylight, so I didn't have real high hopes of killing him. So this nice, pretty nice 9-pointer comes in. I shoot him, lower my bow down. I'm climbing down the tree. I'm not halfway down the tree, and the really big buck comes by at like 25 yards. And, he's just, if I'd have just waited 5 more minutes, it'd have been a done deal. Just would have been a chip shot. So, yeah, there has been times I've regretted it.
Was that the I guess buck that I gave you hell about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Happy with him, I guess. Well, he ended up being a lot. I knew he wasn't giant, but he ended up being a lot smaller than I thought, and he died in the worst place a deer could possibly ever die. I don't know if my shot killed him or the fall killed him. I got to that ravine, and I said, if that deer made it across this ravine, there is no chance I'm finding them. And I looked down and down and down and down, and there he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I shot the deer at 8:30 in the morning, and it was dark before I got him out.
Jeez. Man, you had a heck of a time. This year you had like 6 minutes of YouTube video dedicated to you trying to get your quad out of a ravine.
Yeah, it's kind of become, ever since that video, it's kind of become like it's almost like a Tanner video if they're in some kind of ATV drama.
throwing all the stuff off the back of it, jumping logs and stuff. It goes back a ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions we had was kind of, what is your hunting style? In our Patreon group, we've got a small group of guys who support the show financially, and so we have a Marco Polo group where we talk to them and everything. One of our oldest patrons, Craig Kroom, was asking kind of like, what does it look like for you? Are you hunting bedding? Are you hunting food sources? What is your style? And one of the things I kind of said to him was, it seems like you're kind of willing to do whatever it takes to kill a deer, but you and I have had a lot of conversations about how you think, I'm not going to phrase this well, you can correct me, but how people make it harder than it should be. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
So to me, I would say in Georgia, I'm primarily hunting bedding or a buck's core area. Like I said, down here, you're not going to find a buck's bed. Generally what I do, and I know I'll catch some slack for this, but down here I hunt over corn probably 90% of the time. And if you think about, you could almost put it like, so you know how a GPS figures your location? You're this far from this satellite, this far from this satellite, this far from this satellite.
Yeah.
So if I have 4 corn piles on a property and say a buck hits one or let's just say I have one. Okay, I would look at a property and I would say, here's the thick stuff. He's probably bedded somewhere in there. Say it's a transitional line or an edge of like a clear cut and open hardwoods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd put a camera up and I'd put some corn out, and say he's there at 10 o'clock. I would think, okay, I'm somewhat close to his bed, but I'm not that close. I might wait a week or two. And if he don't ever come any earlier than 10 o'clock, I might go 300 yards this way down the line and 300 yards this way down the line, and generally keep moving until I can get him hitting it like right at dark or in daylight. And people talk crap about it, but it's just kind of one of those things. Like, to me, that's the only way you're finding where a buck's bedding in the South. I mean, like, you got 150 acres of stuff that you cannot crawl through. You're not going to go find the exact 2 square feet that a buck's laying down on. And like Chase was saying earlier, he might have 10 spots in there that he'll lay down. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyway, so here in Georgia, I normally try to find a buck's core area, and 90% might be a stretch. Probably 75% of the time I hunt over corn. And the rest but once I know his core area, I mean, you don't really need corn. I mean, I think it's easier to kill a buck without it with a rifle, but I think it's easier to kill one on film with a bow over corn. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I can when I figure out a buck's core area, I can go see him easier by hunting just natural sign, but I can get him to stand still and model for the camera and be within bow range easier over corn. But then out of state, I look for what I would call the limiting factor or the most limited factor. And basically, that means a deer needs food, water, and bedding to survive, and he's got to walk between the 3. So whichever of those is the most limited is going to concentrate the deer the most. For example, in Kansas, there's almost no cover. So if you're in the thick stuff, there's going to be deer crammed in there. And then you think about a buck during the time period I'm there is wanting to sniff as many does as he can. So generally what I end up hunting is 2 thin strips of woods separating 2 bigger blocks of woods, because the deer is limited in the amount of cover. So you assume any block of woods is going to have does in it. How's the buck going to get between the 2? You know what I mean? But then you look at, like, farther west, it might be water. You can sit on a watering hole and see see more deer than you would anywhere else. Down here in the South, I'd say the most limiting factor is probably food, and that's why baiting works so good. Well,
Really?
I say
You think the limiting factor in the South is food?
it's definitely not water or cover,
Well, sure. Well,
but
okay.
food isn't really that limited either, though. So,
Right.
and that's
I
part
hear
of
what
why
you're
hunting
saying.
the
Of the
South is a
3,
lot
it might
harder.
be. Yeah.
Maybe quality food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a deer's got lots of browse, but he doesn't have a cornfield he can go eat out to his heart's content down here. And then, to me, what I've found that concentrates them better than anything is really steep areas, like Ohio or Eastern Kentucky, finding the geofunnels in there to where they might go when they're cruising or go between food and bedding. Especially like my style of hunting, which is showing up to a state and basically trying to kill something as quick as I can and move to the next state. Or you kind of get to speed scouting, and that keying in on that limiting factor seems to work the best for that. Especially, which, I mean, I guess somewhere to walk. I don't know if you would. I'm not exactly sure how to phrase that. You know what I mean? But
Security cover?
yep. Well, you got food, water, and bedding, and the paths they take between them. But when
Sure.
you get to those really steep spots like Ohio and Eastern Kentucky, and I generally key in on the paths they take between them. But to me is like a lot more conducive to speed scouting, because I can pull up the topo on Onyx and draw an X on a map in Ohio, and when I get there, 90% of the time it looks just as good as I think it should in my mind. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, even say Kansas, like the cover limits them and concentrates them down a lot, but you you still sometimes have a hard time keying in on them because they'll just do weird stuff like walk across the field, like where being from the South, I'd be thinking a deer would never do that. So anyway, yeah, I guess if I had to sum up my style in one phrase, it would be finding the most limited factor and keying in on it. But
Yeah, I could see that. I I've never heard you put it that way though. It's just taking me a second to process it because we've talked about the limiting factors, but I don't think I've ever heard you like kind of tie it in like that. And I can see when you say it's things like that, it kind of makes sense why hunting in the deep south is so difficult because
because
you get down.
there's really no true limited factor.
Sure. Yeah, and I've always talked about that, but use different words, right? Like a lack of topography, a lack of diversity of true diversity of habitat, right, or a scarcity of habitat. You're totally right. There's no limiting factor, and then on top of that, with the exception of one state that you can talk about, it feels like southern deer are skittish as hell,
For sure, man.
except for West Virginia. West
Shoot.
Virginia takes king, right?
Well, the West Virginia, it was like they would pick you out in a heartbeat. I mean, honest to God, the deer, I ended up shooting that walk. I was 50 feet in the air, no doubt about it. Like, my buddy knew where I was at, and, like, we were coming in to look at my arrow and see if we could find it. And I still had deer under me, so I told him to drive up on the four-wheeler and run them deer off so I didn't spook them. So he drives up on me, and he cannot figure out where I'm at. And when he finally sees me, his jaw drops. He's like, oh, my God. I had hunted 30, 35 feet for 3 or 4 days and had been picked out every single sit. So I was like, I'm just going to see what it takes to not get seen by these deer. And I'm 50 feet in the air, and that deer's 10 yards away and just looks straight up. I mean, it blew my mind. But then on the flip side, they'd walk across where you walked in and not pay it any attention. Whereas here in Georgia, if a mature doe crosses your entry path, you're getting blown at probably 95% of the time.
Mm.
And that's like, I don't care if you're wearing every carbon suit you can find, washed all your clothes, took a shower, rubber boots. It don't matter. If they cross where you walked in, especially like in the woods, it's normally a done deal. If you're on like a wide open road or something, like a logging road, and you're not brushing up against any cover, you might get away with it sometimes. But anyway, yeah, those West Virginia deer they'd pick you out, but other than that, I wouldn't say they were, like a southern deer is a lot more likely to run off. I mean, even when they pick you out, they're not, a lot of times they wouldn't blow. If you just sat still, they'd just kind of ignore it,
Yeah. How do you,
Tanner,
go ahead.
are there a bunch of does in Georgia compared to bucks? Like, what do you think the buck to doe ratio is?
I would say overall, probably 2 to 1, I guess.
That's
2 to
not
1. Okay.
I mean, it's hard to say. Some of my better properties, I would say, would almost be 1 to 1. But I'd say like the state as a whole, there's 2 or 3 does for every buck.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes sense because what do y'all get 10 does and 2 bucks?
Yeah, I mean, almost nobody kills 10 does though.
Right, but even if they're killing 4 or 5.
Right. Whenever you hear, but you got to figure the bucks are killing each other a lot of times.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so you're killing does, but bucks have a lot higher natural mortality rate.
Oh, okay. I see
Right,
what you're saying.
when they get older, yeah.
Yeah.
Like and they don't do it as bad here because our buck to doe ratio is a lot better. But like somewhere like Kansas or somewhere like that where it's closer to 1 to 1, bucks kill each other like all the time, like a lot. Like every deer you see has scars and is limping.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think that's
Yes.
indicative of a good buck to doe ratio there though? Because I don't see that here in Florida.
right. They're fighting. There's a lot more competition for the does. I mean, it's
Right.
like if you see a doe being chased, it's usually more than one buck chasing her.
Yeah, and that's probably why you like to hunt right there.
Honest to God, I've actually probably witnessed a buck chase a doe in Georgia less than 10 times in my life.
What?
Like, I mean, honestly, but you go to Kansas and you might see it 30 times in a week.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Florida, I mean, I would have to say that I don't know what the buck to doe ratio is, but I would assume it's probably at least 4 or 5 to 1,
Yeah.
probably, does to bucks, somewhere in that area. Because I heard something somewhere it was like, it's probably not off as much as you think it is, and usually the highest buck to doe ratio that they normally see somewhere is usually in that 4 or 5 does to 1 buck area.
Yeah, when you hear people saying they have a 10-to-1 buck to doe ratio, that just doesn't exist, really. I mean, maybe some vast extreme case, but
Right.
just
Yeah.
the
So
fact that 50% of the fawns are male and 50% are female, generally, that levels it out to where it's never going to be more than like 4 or 5.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, and Florida's changed their rules because before you could shoot 2 bucks a day every day for the season and only shoot does during archery and then limited during like general firearm time. But I think I've seen a ton. I mean, heck, I've seen in Florida. I've probably seen 11 or 12 bucks chasing does in one sit, but and it's a small window. But I also think, and that's young bucks. But like I think for like the more mature bucks down here, a lot of times is what you get is there is no competition for a mature buck. Like a big true mature buck's not fighting anybody really for a doe. Like he's on does from the get go and stays on does probably 2.5 months of the season is that's what he's focused on. And I think a lot of that's why it's a little bit harder here where you can easily kill a 2, 3 year old. Well, I'd say probably 1.5, 2.5 year old bucks. It's because they're the ones out chasing all the time. And the big boys here don't really have to chase at all because the doe groups, they know where the doe groups are, and there's usually 4 or 5 in a group, and they're not really the ones ever pursuing the does unless it gets like really towards the end of the season when they've run out of does at that point. They might be chasing a doe around in the daylight where it just doesn't really happen as much down here because they don't really have any competition of the other bucks or worrying about fighting them or anything like that. Very rarely do you see a fight. You might see some sparring and stuff on camera, but I've never seen a fight like in Florida. Like my buddy has. I know one buddy that's seen like some knockdown drag out fights, but I've never seen one. And you don't hardly ever encounter any bucks that have scars or anything like that where they've been poked by other bucks.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a knockdown drag out. Like bachelor groups, I've seen them fight like every day, but like like on camera, they'll fight every single day. But as far as like an actual true fight, I've never seen it.
right. Yeah.
That's an interesting point, Chase, because you're right. A mature deer on the landscape here doesn't have any competition.
Yeah, for the most part, no.
Yeah.
I'm not saying mature, like bigger, like bigger in the antler department, whatever you want to
Right.
call them. But for the most part, yeah, he's got his territory, and he's running that territory, and he's breeding whatever does he wants. Because a lot of our smaller bucks, I mean, are small. They're not
Yeah.
going to go up against a mature buck here. I mean, the difference in body weight's probably 50, 60 pounds or
Yeah.
more that
Yeah.
you're going up against, and their headgear doesn't even go together. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
some of the stuff you're seeing trying to fight, it's like they might put their heads together, but then it's over. So I've seen some small bucks and stuff kind of fight, but for the big bucks, I don't think they're ever really out there. They're not having to try very hard, basically. It's just not, they don't have to try hard. Whereas in Kansas or some of these other Midwest states, there are more mature bucks out there that they've got to compete against. And the doe ratio is closer to the 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or whatever it is. So they really are survival of the fittest out there as opposed to here where pretty much all of them are getting laid. It's just the bigger ones don't have to try very hard.
Right. And you also have to figure the intensity of their rut. So like our rut, like as far as like the activity that you actually witness, our rut, like our deer here in Georgia are basically mutts. Like you have some native stock and stock from different places, and as a result, your rut is spread out a lot more. Whereas like that's why, or part of the reason why you don't ever have the days where you see 15 bucks. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
whereas there, it's like the rut is like all systems go for a couple weeks, and it's wide freaking open because it's like one pure strain of deer, and that's when they rut.
Right. And they have to because of weather reasons up there, like in Iowa or whatever. Like they have to kind of breed at a certain time, or the fawn survival rate for the next year is a lot lower. Whereas in the South, they don't ever have a cold enough weather to worry about fawn survival rate down here. I mean, and there are some areas that have flooding, like we've talked about before, like down in South Florida and some of the areas where there's these areas that flood certain times of the year, and they either rut a lot sooner than everybody else. And down in South Florida, I mean, they're already rutting August 1st when they're starting to hunt down there. August 1st is when their rut is, and it's full bore open for the most part. But like in some of these other areas, like I said, there are deer from different parts of the country, and the fact is that they don't have to worry about it, and there are more does, so they don't get to all the does first go round when they come into estrus. They have to hit them the second time when they come in, or third time when they come in. So it's just that trick. I call it a trickle rut, where it just seems like it
Yeah.
kind of trickles a lot of the season.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think you the more I think about that ratio you talked about in Georgia, do you think that that probably holds true on public land as well?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I've only hunted public land in Georgia like twice in my life,
It
but
it is remarkably better than Florida. I mean,
I know that a lot of your public land, to me, I'd go off on a whole tangent about how I think they're managing a lot of it like way wrong. Um,
how so?
well, a lot of it is like they're just waging war on bucks. I mean, it's like there's one near my house that it's got a pond that we go fish, and you can drive your truck there and see more deer on the side of the road than you'll see anywhere in the whole county. But there's like 2 days a year that you're allowed to shoot a doe, and they have all these quota hunts or check-in hunts that basically give you 2 free buck tags, and you have 3 days to use them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like, in my opinion, it's like they're just, it's like incentivizing people just to shoot the first little buck they see, and then they give them free tags to do it. And meanwhile, the deer population as a whole is higher than most private land. You just can't shoot any does.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, that's kind of the same issue here. I mean, unless you're in bow season, you can't shoot a doe on almost all public land.
and they've made it that way on private land too. A couple years ago they introduced these doe days, where they've got it where like the times of the year when most people are hunting, like around the opener and Thanksgiving, are buck only. And I don't feel like there's anywhere that I hunt that the deer population is low. I feel like it's on the high side everywhere across the 3 counties I hunt. I don't have anywhere that's not just, in my opinion, probably more deer than you would actually want. Yet, and I've talked to a lot of people that agree with that. Yet they introduce these doe days in the times when the most people hunt, and basically that incentivizes meat hunters to kill little bucks. You know what I mean? Like if you just want some meat in your cooler, and you can't shoot a doe, you're gonna shoot a spike.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
That what you're describing though, Tanner, is the exact same thing I think we see here, and that is when you throw things out of whack with the buck to doe ratio because you let 2 deer a day be shot in perpetuity, and then to bring the population up, you make it buck only for a long period of time. You make the rut difficult, you make the hunting difficult, and then by not providing meat hunters the opportunities to shoot does, now you're incentivizing a younger age class of bucks to constantly be shot, which I'm not holding that against anybody. If you want to shoot a young deer, that's what you should do. However, biologically speaking, there is a negative impact by not having, older age classes of bucks on the landscape. It has an impact, and I think, the only way to really fix a buck to doe ratio, unfortunately, is to shoot does, and then increase the carrying capacity of the land, increase the ability of those does to drop more than one fawn every year, and then manage it from that point moving forward. And I think the doe day idea can sometimes backfire seriously if we're not careful.
I think it's a good idea when it's needed, but I just don't. I mean, like, I don't think it's an issue most places in Georgia. I think, if anything, I mean, like, the county I live in is one of the counties they instituted the doe days, and I just don't see how on earth they possibly determine that we don't have an overpopulation of does.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think the idea behind the doe days was maybe a good idea, but I think the application sucked because if you go up to like Union, Fannin, Rabun County up there in like extreme North Georgia, the deer population up there is hurting. Like it
Right.
genuinely is hurting. But you're talking about two like polar opposites for the amount of deer on the landscape where you are in central. I mean, you're dang near Macon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a totally different scenario than the North Georgia mountains.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I would point out that the issue that they're facing in the North Georgia mountains has very less to do with how many does are being shot, and a lot to do with the fact that those mountain woodland areas are woefully mismanaged, and there's nothing there for them to eat. The carrying capacity of the land is low.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I was
so.
about to say.
But I think that's kind of the same thing we face in Florida, though. To be honest with you, I think the carrying capacity on a lot of our public land here isn't great, anyways. So you're not gonna, you're only gonna achieve so much. You're only gonna achieve so much with these changes. So, I don't know what the solution is. I'm not a biologist. It's just, I'm just talking, basic principles here.
Right.
Let's story time this thing right here. All the time you spend in the woods, all the time you spend traveling. What's the weirdest thing you've encountered in your out-of-state deer hunting travels?
The weirdest thing. I don't know, man. You kind of put me on the spot on that one. Let's see. Last year in Kentucky, there was two people about to fight in a parking lot in Walmart.
We'll circle back to that one.
So, I'll tell you, I wrote this lady a letter one time asking for permission. And she told me that she wrote me a letter back, and this is on my YouTube. She wrote me a letter back saying that she wouldn't give me permission because there was a rabid raccoon in her area that was attacking people. And she said that, as you know, this happens about every 7 or 8 years. This being the 7th year, feel free to contact me next year and we can talk about it. So basically, to this lady, set in stone every 7 years, there's predictably going to be a rabid raccoon in her area. For whatever reason, the next 6 years, you're safe.
You can pet any of them.
Good.
Chase, can you confirm that as a first responder? Is that typically the
I'm not from that area, so but I have not read that in any like medical books of a rabid raccoon problem every
It's almost
7,
biblical.
8 years.
Oh my gosh, that's Okay, that
But I never wrote her another letter.
why not?
Like, yeah, I don't want to hunt there anymore.
Oh
he's
man,
afraid of the
yeah, afraid of the raccoons. I mean, dadgum. That's as you know. that's that's the best part of
Yeah.
that response. As you know.
Right. It might have been as it goes or something, but like basically, like the way she put it was like this was just everybody knew that. Like it's just
Oh God.
Nice. Well, Tanner, I got a question for you. And it seemed like this kept popping up over and over again. And I really didn't read a lot of the questions, but I assume this would be a question for someone like yourself. And we mentioned that you're hunting about 5 months out of the year. And pretty much a lot of the guys were on the same kind of line as that. How do you get a wife that allows you to hunt as much as you do?
well,
Like, where do you find this woman at? This unicorn.
the answer is kind of in the question. When you say allows you to, you already messed up.
Or who puts up with you hunting 5 months out of the year?
The thing is, you meet one and you just this is the way it's gonna be. If you don't like it, then you ain't the one.
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure there's been a lot of guys that do that, and then it just ends up in
Yeah, I was about to
a
say.
later on divorce.
They agree.
probably,
They agree early
but,
on.
It's
You gotta make it clear from day one, man, because you don't want to. That way, it's just you get them trained, man. That's the way it is.
right. So
But if you go through the honeymoon phase and don't hunt as much, and then 3 or 4 years down the road you start wanting to hunt all the time, you done screwed up. I just got lucky. Man. I got lucky, I guess. I mean, she like I'm supposed to be home on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and generally I'm like coming in the door, like feeding the way home to get in, like because like Thanksgiving, of course, it changes every year, but say you got early Thanksgiving, I'm hunting somewhere until like the last possible second, flying home and like meeting at my mom's house, and she had to drive her own car to my mom's house to sit down and eat Thanksgiving there. Like last possible second. But other than Thanksgiving and Christmas, she don't like literally throughout the course of an entire deer season. She might complain like one time. But I just got lucky. She's pretty laid back.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. So basically, it's like a lotto ticket, is what you're telling everybody.
I guess. I mean, yeah, I reckon. I don't know. I think the main thing is just
Yeah.
make it known from the get-go. I'm gonna be hunting.
What was her ultimatum
Like
to you?
today.
Well, yeah. I mean, you told her from the
Ultimatum?
get go, hey, I'm gonna be hunting. Did she say every Saturday I'm going to Target, and you're not gonna say anything about it?
I didn't really. Actually, she was kind of spoiled the first season because we started dating on like Halloween, and I was already tagged out. And I was in high school then, so I wasn't going to another state. But like, it wasn't like I don't know. I mean, she does crafting. I don't know. I'm definitely not going to complain about that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Hobby Lobby's got
Yeah,
coupons,
yeah.
man.
Any kids? Are there any kids in the future?
in the future,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the future, man.
Well, I mean, people talk about it when they get married, or you've been married for a while,
Yeah.
right?
We don't have any immediate plans of it.
Yeah.
Shit
Yes, it
happens.
does.
Well, if you're gone for 5 months, then the chances are a lot
That's true.
slimmer.
I make up for lost time when I get back.
Well, you just don't want to mess
Yeah.
up on Valentine's Day,
Yeah,
because that's the rut time, apparently, from what I've seen.
5 months.
Oh, I know.
Probably a total of 1 month.
Yeah, you're hunting a lot in Georgia for that time. Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really ever miss it. Like, rarely do I miss a day here. I mean, if I tag out, I'm like trying to find somebody that's having a rough year and take them. Like.
Yeah, that's the one thing that also it has always impressed me is your willingness to take other people.
Yeah, it seems like I have really bad luck when it comes to that, but
How so?
I've never. I don't think I've ever taken anybody that actually ended up killing.
Oh, really?
But I've had probably 4 misses on the biggest deer of their life, and several.
Well,
My brother last year missed the biggest deer of his life, 2 different deer in one morning.
Golly.
Well,
You know,
I need to come up there and,
so you're
and
not
break
a
that.
guide.
I tried to take walks or offered to.
Yeah,
It's too cool.
I, I ran out of ways to say no, so I went and caught COVID so that I could avoid it.
Yeah. Look, that's it's like you don't have that anymore, right?
What was that?
I said you don't even have COVID anymore, dude.
That's true.
That's like it's like if I had COVID, I would be in a tree. I promise you.
Yeah, not if you
I ain't
not
try-
if you had it the way
I
that I had
ain't
it. I
trying to
guarantee
flex or
that.
nothing, but
Yeah, there was no climbing trees if you had COVID the way that I did. That was
yeah.
something else.
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Ground blind. Ground blind.
Ground blind. That's right.
Oh, you gotta figure. I almost cut my toe off, dude. I couldn't walk. If I walked 10 yards, my shoe would fill up with blood.
That's right.
That was like half of my deer season this year.
Didn't they almost have to take your toe off?
Huh?
Didn't they have to almost amputate the toe? Didn't he get infected or something like that?
Yeah, they almost did cut it off. So here's what happened. I was wearing flip flops and this buck had got hit I seen all these buzzards on the train track. So like, I bet you a deer got hit by a train. So I go over there and there's guts all over the train track. I was like, yep. So I started looking and then one buzzard like flew up out of the woods. I was like, that's where he is. So I go over there. I go back to my truck and I have a little bag on my climber that's always got a limb saw in it. So I get my limb saw and go over there and I'm holding the deer's antler down with my foot sawing his rack off. And when it gets through, the saw flips through and like cuts my big toe. Well, dude, it starts shooting blood out like 3 feet. And I mean, I got a video I can show you. It's just shooting blood out. So I was supposed to take my buddy hunting that afternoon. So this is gonna sound stupid, but I was like, how am I gonna stop this blood? So I just got a good wad of blood and like slapped it on there and walked back in my truck and I'm trying to think what I got. Some tape or something, just taped it around my sock real tight. So anyway, my buddy gets there. We start walking to the woods, probably good, I don't know, 400 or 500 yards to the tree I was going to have a climb. And, dude, my shoe is just filling up with blood. So we get there, we get up the tree, and we didn't even get as high as we were going to get. And I told him, like, yeah, dude, I'm about to pass out. It's not as high as we're going to go. Like, I guess I was going to pass out from blood loss. I don't know. But,
Good
like, the
Lord.
whole bottom of my climber is covered in blood. And so I'm like, well, we're here. So I hunt. Then after that, I was like, I guess I better go to the dang doctor because this thing ain't going to stop bleeding. So, turned out the biggest mistake I made was not going to the doctor immediately because they said since I crammed it full of mud and didn't go to the doctor immediately, they couldn't stitch it up. So then for like the next month and a half, it just busted wide open, which they told me to stay in bed, which I wasn't going to do. So it just busted wide open split like every single day. But yeah, it ended up getting infected because I was like, this thing's bleeding. There ain't no point cleaning it. It's just going to keep bleeding. Well, apparently dried blood harbors infection.
God.
So, Yeah, the doctor said he was like, if it got any worse, he was gonna have to cut my toe off.
All that for a train hit deer.
Yeah, dude, it was like a tiny little 6-pointer, like just straight up a yearling.
I shouldn't laugh.
Need to find the tape and get that thing mounted.
Yeah.
For all that.
The yearling that almost killed Tanner Edenfield.
Yeah.
So, let me ask you this: how do you, or do you? You may not. Do you ever suffer mentally after during the grind? I mean, you hunt a lot. Do you ever find that it's difficult to like get up and go the next day, or do you just wake up every day ready to go?
Yeah, so like when it comes to like, and I saw like where people were asking that on the thing, like when it comes to like, I mean, if I got tired of going, I would not go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if it quit being fun, I would take a day off. But it's not, you know what I mean? I wouldn't consider it mental toughness. It's like I have to prepare myself to not be hunting every day. You know what I mean? Like, like it's not. It would take more mental toughness for me to not be in the woods than it does for me to be there. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, if I can't make it to the woods, I'm panicking.
Yeah.
Like to me, it's the easiest thing in the world to be deer hunting. Like, how could that be? You know what I mean? How could that be hard?
Do you feel like, do you ever find it to where it's like the compromise that you strike with yourself is maybe you go sit on a power line or something, or maybe you don't go as far, but you're just always still out there?
Sometimes. Well, yeah, sometimes, but it's generally if I do a lazy hunt, it's because like work just made it where,
Right.
like work or whatever just made it where I would be doing more harm than good by hunting the way I want to be. And actually, a lot of my hunting, especially here, is kind of, I guess, you talking about just like sitting right off the power line or something like that. That's actually the way I hunt most of the time here, just because I feel like your entry and exit route is so important. And if you can be right off of something that, a deer's used to traffic, like right off a road or right off a power line, then I feel like you're better off. You know what I mean? Like the less chances that you have to cut your trail, the better off you are. So,
No, that makes sense, for sure.
A lot of my hunts are lazy hunts. So.
I think a lot of people who get tired. Now, I'm not trying to like, I don't know. I'm not bashing anybody. I'm not giving anybody like a hard time. But I think a lot of people who get burnt out, I think, are people who maybe have set themselves up with unfair expectations. I'm making allowance for people who are struggling because their hunting is hard. I mean, that's a totally different scenario. But it's been very infrequent for me when my mind is in the right spot and I have realistic expectations for myself. I found it very difficult not to be motivated to go.
Right.
But I hear a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people too, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, I had these 4 big bucks on camera, and it just I put 39 hunts in and didn't make it happen. I don't know if I'm going in the morning." And it's like maybe I don't hunt enough big deer to where I don't get burnt out, but for me, being out there, it sounds cheesy, but being out there and being and having the pursuit, more or less, so long as I'm seeing deer, I'm willing to get up and go the next day. I mean, I've had my own lows. Like 2 years ago was a very tough year for me, but that was year 3 of getting my teeth kicked in. It took 3 years of that before I started really having motivation issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely easy to get motivated. I mean, it's definitely easy to get discouraged if you're not seeing deer or whatever.
Yeah.
But generally, if I'm not seeing deer, I'm changing enough. I'm changing something to where it's kind of exciting. It's back to that what if factor. And also, I'm like, if I'm not seeing deer, I'm really not hunting. I'm scouting. You know what I mean? So, like that in itself kind of keeps it new and exciting enough to where it's not really getting burnt out, I guess.
Yeah. And
And, you know, it's
I just want to
something.
reiterate, I'm not like bashing on people who get frustrated. I've been there. I think having the right expectations changes a lot of things. I had to talk to a couple people this year that's like, I put in a lot of time on public land this year in Florida, and I didn't get any of the bucks that I was after, and it's like, I mean, that first off sounds a lot like public land in Florida. So,
Right.
if you're upset about the fact
And
that it played out the way that it played, it's kind of supposed to in this state. Hunt
and
Georgia.
also, it's kind of like, there's almost never a time that I'm not seeing deer, but it's like like I said, now I don't necessarily knock on doors as much unless I just got a good deer that I think I need to get the next property to kill them. But like for years and years, 365 days a year, I was finding properties to where I'm not like I'm rarely not seeing deer. You know what I mean? Like it was 4 or 5 years of grinding to now I'm at a point that I'm seeing deer, and the parts of the year that typically kind of suck, which to me is the month of December, hunting other states, or I might go to Alabama, or I might, I would be content to parts of, which actually this year I ended up killing a good buck in December, but I was like that day, I was content to just go be in the woods and try to shoot a doe. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't even the deer I killed. I wasn't even hunting. I wasn't like with it sucking. I wasn't even burning myself out trying to shoot one of my deer I was chasing, because number one, like you said, it does get discouraging not seeing them, and number two, I feel like I was doing more harm than good by even messing with them when it's 70 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I think resetting things and keeping things lighthearted is important. Chase doesn't know anything about that because he's got like 15 deer underneath him everywhere he goes. Seems like public or private.
Yeah. How long did it take you?
Huh?
How long did it take you?
Well, he's got a height standard. It's kind of like a roller coaster. You have to be this tall or taller to ride, and I don't come in near tall enough.
We're not that close to each other.
I'm pretty tall, Trey.
Yeah, you're pretty tall. I'll take you hunting, man. Hey, come on down. The thing with Walter is our schedules generally don't match each other. So.
Yeah, that's the big issue there. Yeah, I'm a weekend warrior, and he's he goes Monday through Friday.
I'm an every third day guy.
Yeah,
basically. I can hunt every third day.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Unless I take off.
Yeah. Well, Chase, do you have any questions for Tanner? I've kind of ran the gamut of things that I felt like were important to talk.
The only question I have is, what does next season entail for you, Tanner? Have you planned on what you're going to do next season or anything?
I'm not sure. I'm assuming I'm going to draw Kansas next season, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Like, the unit I hunt is almost a guaranteed draw. Like, I know a guy that's been going for like 12 years and has never not been drawing. I was just one of the lucky few that didn't get to go. So, for sure, Kansas and Ohio. I would say probably for sure Alabama, probably West Virginia, and I'm thinking of writing some letters to Indiana and trying it. I don't know. That's it so far, but we'll see.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Well, sounds like action-packed. Right. Yeah. I hadn't decided if I'm going to hunt Kansas this year or not. I have a preference point that I bought last year. just to buy one, just in case. I was like, well, if I ever have a year that I want to definitely go out there. Normally, if you have at least one preference point, you're pretty much guaranteed to hunt anywhere in
Yeah,
Kansas.
I would say.
So
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start buying a preference point for Kansas starting next year or this year, and then obviously I got one. Tanner, I think you and I are supposed to draw Iowa at the same time, right? Isn't that what you had me do? Start putting in at the same time as you so we can get drawn together.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I got 1 point right now.
Yeah, that's what I've got. I've got 1 point too. I remember you told me I should start putting in because we'd be at the same time, and I don't know how many points that was, but I think that was just this past 2020. I bought 1 point.
Yeah. So it just depends where you go, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going wherever Jason went. That's for dang sure.
Hey, were you hunting public land or was it outfitter or what?
I hunted some private and public. One piece of private and then
Yeah,
public.
but fishing on the private land.
What's that?
The private land you were hunting, was it somebody you knew or was it like?
It was somebody my buddy knew. I went up there with a buddy of mine, and he's the one that he's the reason I applied to go up there 5 years ago.
Well, listen, dude, I appreciate you taking well, it's been longer than that because we got disconnected there in the middle, but at least an hour and 45 minutes out of your evening. I'm sure Alana is ready to have you back. I got one question for you.
Texted me about 30 minutes ago saying dinner's ready.
Here's my final parting question for you, and then I'll let you be. I end every episode. I try to best I can with this parting question. Have you heard it before?
Nah, bro.
You don't listen to the podcast? You're breaking my heart, dude.
Not very often, I'm going to be honest with you. If I do, I don't listen. Apparently, I don't know the part.
You don't listen to the end. You just get the good stuff and leave. That's what we're gonna. That's gonna be the company line. All right. So you go back to your earliest Tanner Edenfield self before you killed a 140, before you were social media
I've never
famous.
killed one.
What singular piece of deer hunting advice would you give yourself that would have changed your path as a deer hunter?
Oh. Don't sleep in on December 8th, 2000, and I would have been 2012 or 13, maybe 14.
What happened that day?
I had been, it would have probably been 13. I was still living with my parents. There was, in my backyard, there was like a 140-inch buck, big 10-pointer. I hunted him like, he showed up like, actually it's funny how it happened. I had baited up all these does all year, and I said I wasn't going to hunt it until like November 8th, which is normally like a good day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had waited all this time with anticipation of hunting it then. And it was supposed to rain that day. My dad was going down about an hour away, and I was like, well, I guess sit in the box blind over there. So I went there, and that's when that deer showed up. But then I hunted him like every day that the wind was right. Because, I'm hunting on like 10 acres, so it ain't like I can really move around. It's just a matter of him showing up or not, Well, December 8th came around. I was going to go home, but what it was is there was a house right across the highway I was wanting to possibly buy and turn into a rental. I didn't know how much it sold for. I ended up going for way more than I could afford. But anyway, that started at 9, so I would have only been able to hunt till like 8:30 or 8. So my alarm goes off. I'm like, I ain't going to be able to hunt that long. Might as well just not even go. Go back to sleep. Check the camera. There he is, broad freaking daylight. Probably the biggest deer I've ever had a picture of around here. And looking back, that's like probably my biggest regret deer hunting wise.
The one that got away.
Yeah. That ain't really a piece of advice, though. Maybe I need to remind it. I'll tell you what, if when am I going back to?
The point in which you think it would have changed you the most. It could be a week ago if you need to, but typically I frame it such as if you could go back to your earliest deer hunting self, like the early years, and give yourself some
Probably
kind of.
focus. Probably, I would have probably told myself to find an archery coach right out of the gate and start shooting blank bells a lot. Because really, for the first, until I was probably 18, I was missing as many or more deer as I was hitting, and I'm still pretty bad. But when I really started shooting blank bells and getting my target panic under control and getting my shot down to a real repeatable process and getting a lot calmer, I think that's really when I kind of turned the corner.
Right on.
Yeah, making it count.
Well, dude, I appreciate you taking all this time out your evening, chatting with us. And I'm going to end this one knowing that the way that I ended it the last time led to it being almost 2 years before I had you back on. But I'd like to have you back on at some point. We've got a series that we're putting together for this upcoming year that I'm not going to release what it is, but I'd like to have you on and kind of pick your brain along the lines of the we'll say it a hindsight's 2020 type series. But maybe pick your brain about this past deer season and maybe dig a little deeper into what unfolded for you.
Sounds good, man. And by the way, if anybody wants to see what unfolded, check out Halfway Will Travel on YouTube.
There you go. I was about to give you the opportunity. Round it out. Tell them where they can find all your content. What's your social media handles and everything?
Last time you forgot to ask.
I did.
Yes, you did. I had to make my own shout-out opportunity. So it's Halfway Will Travel on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I think that's all I'm on. I don't know. I think I might be on TikTok still. I ain't got over there in a while, though, so don't expect a whole lot out of it.
All right, man. I appreciate you. Hang on one second. I'm going to close this out, but I want to chat with you afterwards. Guys, we are back. I apologize for the delays. Probably by the time you hear this, there's probably close to a 3 weeks delay, but Chase and I needed to take some time off for the holidays, and then I went and caught the vid, and that had me under for quite some time. But we are back in action. It is 2021. We got a lot of fun things planned for you, and number one thing we'd ask of you is we grow via word of mouth. If you tell a friend, tell somebody about the podcast, send it to your 3 closest friends. That's how we grow. That's how the podcast grow, and we would greatly appreciate it. So until next time, no matter what you do, get outside and enjoy the great outdoors.